Well, welcome to week 2, and I just wanted to thank you for all your participation last week. And I did want to respond a little bit to the post forum before we get going with kind of a more of a historical, ethical, philosophical look at argument and moral reasoning this week. And this is the tragic case of this young, I believe she's 13 years old, and a lot of you wrote about the mother's wishes and what the mother is feeling and the mother's emotions, and those are all very valid considerations here. But especially as you go through this week, one of the big questions I would throw back at you, and in some of your comments I did, is yes, that is valid, but is that something that we could universalize? Could we keep people who are brain dead on life support simply because the family wishes it to be so? And you get to a point where when we can't afford it, 2, is that what that person, that patient would have wished? And 3, is that right in terms of once you do that, you're taking up a bed, you're taking up resources, you're taking up time, and then we can't give all of that to other people. So could we universalize that practice? And that's something that's going to come from Jeremy Bentham in terms of utilitarianism. Could we make this a rule? Could we make this something that everybody does? And that's where I'm not sure that we could. Now, I do not subscribe to one particular ethical moral theory, but at the same time, it's really helpful to know what some others have identified as valid pieces of moral reasoning as we look at some of these more trying ethical issues. And so this week what we're going to be looking at are some of the more classical approaches to ethical theory, and then some of the ones that have been kind of created or maybe warped into bioethical theory, mostly principalism. And these are not that we're going to subscribe to one or I'm going to make you choose one for the rest of the semester. It's just so that you start to think about, okay, how am I going to approach a problem? And how am I going to approach an issue? And how should we as society approach an issue? Because one of the other things that I want you thinking about this semester is that ethics kind of has 2 realms. A personal realm and then a society realm. And in the society realm is where we have laws and where we have rules, and then in the personal realm sometimes we don't have those things. But how we make decisions in those things may be similar, may be different. For instance, a lot of you in your introductions mentioned abortion. And abortion being something that a lot of people have some personal issues regarding. And so they may choose not to ever have an abortion themselves, while at the same time acknowledging that women in general in society should have the right to do that. So it should not be illegal for women to have an abortion, but they would never choose to do it themselves. You're making an ethical reasoning on 2 different levels, and you're not contradicting yourself. Because you're working on these 2 different levels. And what we have to do is figure out when something's a personal decision and when it's actually a societal, legal decision. And are there different things that we have to think about at those 2 levels? I could lie to you, but you probably won't get any cop to come and get me for it. Unless I lie to you about something significant, like whether or not I sold you a used car that had been in an accident. So there's usually some threshold. But if I just tell you that I like your dress, when I really don't, that's not something that we're going to have a legal debate about. It's just me being a scumbag, although I should like your dress. And so that's what we're going to be exploring this week. There are a lot of resources this week. If you start to get a little overwhelmed by them, don't feel that you ever have to plow through everything I put out there. It's more that this is all of the stuff that's going to help you understand this, so plow through what helps you. So for some of you it will be the text, for some of you the videos will be better, for some of you you might like to read it more out of some of the philosophical entries that I grabbed from the different resources online. Do what is right for you. And to back up to the Jahi story just one more time, I think there's another underlying issue here, and here I'm showing my bias, so you can get me on this. This was not a simple tonsillectomy. They were not simply taking out her tonsils. She had sleep apnea, And so they were doing what was actually a very invasive surgery, and they were removing a lot of matter. Sleep apnea in a child this young is not normal. The little girl was technically obese. And so one of the other questions I'm going to throw at you, and it's not necessarily about this story, but it can be, is should this surgery even have been done? Should they have been more aggressive in finding non-invasive ways to stop that sleep apnea? Basically by getting her a little bit healthier. You did not have a healthy child going into this surgery. You had someone who was sick. That's why she had the sleep apnea. And so my other question is the medical profession set up in such a way now that we too quickly move to invasive procedures? And yes, this is my bias, but we have a horrible case right now because the surgery went horribly wrong. And so I think we are also going to have to think at that level as well. And so we'll talk about that towards the end of the course, but that's the other thing that strikes me about this, as I've read more about this case, is what the heck, how did this kid get even on the operating table? We needed to stop the sleep apnea, but were there other ways to do that? Okay. So hopefully this will, I talked too long again, but this is a big week, and I promise that I will not talk so long in the future. Thank you. Bye-bye.